Good afternoon. Might help if I have on a headset. All right. I think I am connected to all of the things. Hello, hello, hello. Yes, you caught the live. Thank you for being here. Hello. All right. I am going to give it a few minutes as I do. Thank you all very much for being here. And then I will do the intro and we'll get started. Good afternoon. Happy Sunday. All right. All right. I am going to kick it off. Thank you all so much for being here. Happy Sunday, everyone. I know it is a holiday weekend, so folks might be busy traveling, doing all the things. But thank you all very much for being here. All right. Good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you are located. My name is Jewel Pearson. This is Miss Bohemian Soul TV. The segment is Creating Home, a tiny house series. The segment we're going to kick off is the What's Your Question portion, where I answer frequently asked tiny house questions. I alternate between this segment and the conversations on intimate spaces. And normally this would be a conversation I've been traveling. I didn't have a guest lined up, so I need to get on my game and get us a guest lineup. But this morning we will spend some time in community and in conversation. As I introduce myself, I like to say that I built a kind of fancy tiny house in 2015. And since that time, I have shared my journey to hopefully inspire others who are interested in the movement. I do offer coaching and consultations to help others in their tiny house journey. And you can find links to schedule with me in the video description below this video once it goes live. And as I'm doing all of that, I like to serve up a lot of representation in the movement. I want us to see ourselves represented. I want us to have a space where we can talk about our concerns and our, not just concerns, but our joy. But I do want us to see ourselves in this movement. And that is a lot of the intent of what I do here. It is my intent to build figurative and literal community that is inclusive, accessible, and all of the things. And I hope that you'll find this information in the video helpful. I also hope that you'll like it, you'll share it, you'll subscribe to the channel, and then turn on the notification so that you'll know when content is going live and available. All right. I see that we have had some folks join. Hello from Miami. Hi, Sandra. Greetings to you. Welcome. We've got to reconnect on some things. Good day from Texas. Hello. Jacksonville, Florida. Hello, hello. Good morning. Greetings. Good morning. Hello from Atlanta. I'm actually in Atlanta today. Hello, hello. Um, Good morning. Good morning. So yes, I am in Atlanta. For those of you who don't know, I actually consider Atlanta home. It's where I raised my daughter. It's where I feel like I grew into womanhood, and I have an affinity for Atlanta. And my mom and siblings live here, so I consider Atlanta home and absolutely adore this city. So I am here um, and trying to focus on getting some work done. I appreciate you all joining this Sunday. I do not have a guest planned for this Sunday. I don't actually even have a topic planned, but that hasn't stopped us in the past from having some community conversation, and hopefully there will be some questions that I can answer in the chat. As I was thinking about really the what to talk about, I know I share a lot in the community about following your dreams, and most of the time we're talking about the tiny house journey, but I've also shared that dream following and some of the tips and the things that we talk about. It's not necessarily just related to tiny house dreams. It can be applicable to all of the dreams. And I am really having that conversation with self in that I one in following some dreams, some things that I know I want to do, some things that I have on my to-do list that I want to do in and around the movement. Um, One, I am trying to deal with procrastination because I have been procrastinating on a lot of things, and procrastination, distractions. And my interesting thing is that if it was work I needed to do for someone else, it would have already been completed, and I know that. And so I'm trying to um, focus and really get out of my own way. And that is the conversation that I'm having with self right now. And then also the conversation around trusting the process. And one of the things that I know I find as a challenge is my brain just operates as a project manager. It's the work that I've done for many years, but my brain is very much around organization and pulling things together. And I like to map things out, and I like to know the whole picture. And so oftentimes there is a challenge there for me in not necessarily trusting the process. Like I trust the things that things will always work out as they should. I trust that things will work out, ultimately for my greater good, even though you don't often understand the greater good, like sometimes you have to look back on that. But when things are ambiguous, I guess is probably the best way, or I don't know from start to finish how things are going to work out, like trusting the process that it's going to work, even though I don't see the end result, or I don't know the end result. There are some challenges that I know sometimes that I deal with there, and I'm kind of in that space right now. So I am working on all of the things to get out of my own way, to quit procrastinating, and to focus. And so those are the things that I um, wanted to kind of share. It might be something that resonates with somebody, um, and we can always chat about that. And maybe somebody has some things that they want to share around that, or some tips and some tricks that you might want to share with the group to in this conversation. Hello from Michigan. Conversation is always, oh yes, the conversation is always plentiful because you all come to talk about all of the things, and I appreciate it. So thank you. Um, V says, my mother is in the background telling me that I have the same struggles with procrastination. I too am a project manager by trade. I need to use this skill set for my own good and purpose. Absolutely. And I think that is one of my my biggest challenges with self, and one of the things, conversations that I have with self all the time is that the projects that I have on my list, if someone else came to me and they had this list of projects, and it might not even be a paid project, like a friend needed some help doing these things that I have on my list, I would have done them so long ago, like it would have been a wrap. But I don't always get into action for myself in the same way. And I don't know why that is. Maybe I do. I don't know. Who knows? It could be just I don't know. It's something that I need to figure out so that I can get myself to in gear for supporting myself like I should. But yeah, that I can relate to that at 100%. I have some stuff that's been on my to-do list for, so it's big projects, and I guess maybe there's some trepidation, some fear involved in it, but it's a lot of me needing to get out of my own way and get the things done. So B can relate to that clearly. Um, you were also asking me, isn't there a brand new tiny home community that was just developed in the metro Atlanta area? So it is more in South Atlanta, in the College Park area. It is a community by a Black developer. The tiny houses are on foundation. Um, I I think the neighborhood is looks fabulous. The houses are beautiful. They are. I don't know if he intends to build more houses, but yes, the answer to that question is yes. They are on foundation and in the College Park area. What else? What else? What else? Hopefully, my procrastination and lack of focus and knowing that I need to get out of my own way will resonate with somebody, and we can do all of the things together. I My other challenge is that I know I'm also not a winter person. I am a all things spring and summer person. My preference is summer. I get my energy from the sun, and so I know I need to get myself, like, sometimes there's a settling in fall and winter. Maybe fall for me, I can do some settling. Winter, I tend to struggle with the gray days and the cold and the weather. That's absolutely not my favorite. So I struggled there. So I feel like I need to get myself in gear to get to moving before that time sets in, and then I'm in a worse struggle. Casey is saying she we believe the builder is building another community in Union City. Okay, very cool. Again, that's on the south side of Atlanta, past downtown, but beautiful houses, and I absolutely wish him much, much, much success. You're also a summer sun person. Absolutely. And I have figured out, like, sometimes I can be sitting in the house and the day can have started off gray and I feel, a certain way, and then I feel like an energy boost, and I'm trying to figure out what is happening, and then I can look out the window and the sun has come out and it just gives me my energy, or vice versa. I can have felt energized, and then all of a sudden the sun goes in, and the weather changes, and I feel all of that, so I can relate to that. Happy Sunday to you, Rosalind. Yes, seasonal change disorder. The struggle is real. I actually last year bought a light to sit on my desk because seasonal affective disorder, or SADS as it's called. I absolutely can relate to what that feels like and what that does. I bought a light to sit on my desk that is supposed to help with getting that, like, that same light and I guess vitamin D um, from the sunlight. I also know that I Well, I've traveled a lot this summer, but I also try to travel to warm and sunny places during that time because it just um, really does not do well for me. So Rosalind is saying fall is her time of the year. She's a Virgo. Fall is her time of the year, and I'm a Leo, and I'm all things sunshine. All things sunshine. Um, Hello from Puerto Rico. I'm here for the warm weather. I actually was looking at coming to Puerto Rico this weekend, and I put it on the to-do list soon. I love Puerto Rico, and so I am planning to be there soon. I understand the warm weather, the sunshine, and the ocean. Like that's just a fabulous combination. Um, Michelle says she has the happy lamp too. Absolutely. I might mine is a small desk version. I'm thinking I might need to. They're not cheap. Um, I'm thinking I might need to invest in a more substantial one to do some bigger work for me. Sandra is saying, I lived in LA for 10 years and when moving back to DC, I really noticed the difference. Yeah, I wouldn't be able to do DC. I don't do snow. I don't do cold. I don't do, for me, that is hardship dealing with snow and cold. Like my daughter's a Harvard Law graduate. So she went to college, law school in Boston. And then her first job out of law school, she was in Chicago. She's back in Chicago. She's lived in Maryland, and she does not mind the cold weather. She's talked about like the big snow piles, and that just way too much for me. I am all things sunshine, and I would not function well. And I love DC. I love New York. I love Chicago, but I love all of those cities in the spring and the summer. Um, like I even remember visiting her my daughter, when she was in law school, and I think it was like 5 o'clock, and it was pitch dark. I mean, I was like, what in the world is happening? Like, it was really early, and it was pitch dark. And I was like, this would never work for me. So I need to be in places where and the time change is always a challenge for me when it starts getting darker so much earlier. So I can relate. I need to, if the West Coast could figure out how to make the ground stay stiller, that would probably. Oh, and it's also kind of pricey, but that would probably be somewhere I'd be more interested in living. But I do enjoy visiting for sure. Let me see if I see any questions. I have had a lot of questions in my inbox, and I keep trying to tell folks you need to come visit with us on Sundays because this is where I am expending the energy to answer questions. And so I'm hoping people are joining to ask the questions that they have so that I can share the answers here for community and hopefully help others navigate their journey. Um, Hello, Stacy. Stacy. Hello, welcome. Um, if there's some questions, Rosalind is saying, I am originally from St. Louis, and those Midwest winters are none of my business. They would be none of my business either. Like, I could not do it. I was just in Salt Lake City for work, and beautiful right now, but I know that they get a lot of snow. And I have, when I started my tiny house journey, I think I shared this story recently. I started my tiny house journey. I worked for, right before I started, I worked for a company that was headquartered in New York. And they gave me um, an ultimatum that I needed to relocate to New York. They were changing things, and this is when I lived. Where was I living? In Atlanta or Charlotte? I was in Charlotte. I needed to relocate to New York, or I was going to have to take a package. And that was a no-brainer. Like I didn't even need to think about that. I love New York, the summertime, but there is no way I'd live in New York year round. And so that was a no-brainer. And I took the package, and it was, I don't know if I shared this story. I remember talking about this recently with somebody. Um, and it kind of just, as I'm thinking about it, ties into what I was just talking about. Um, I have been, before that happened, I have been saving my money. And I've talked about saving, like the process for me for saving my money at that time to build my tiny house. I actually had a savings account that I could see in online, and it was called Tiny House Fund. So I was funneling money into that account as much as I possibly could. And the name of the account absolutely was to remind me of what my end goal was. And then I got that package. I took the package and lost my job. And it was not the first time that I had been laid off. Um, wasn't the last. Um, and so, but it was that point for me that I decided I was going to pull the trigger and go ahead and start my tiny house build. I had a package to be a cushion. I had the funds that I had been saving, and so I had the time, and so I decided to start my tiny house build, and that was it. And that was kind of the catalyst for me. Like I didn't want to be in a position again where somebody made a decision for me and my livelihood that I didn't have more input in. And so and at that time I had at that point downsized to a one bedroom, one bath apartment because I was in process of saving my money, but I still had rent to pay. And so I wanted more control in my decisioning. And then the conversation that I was having just the other day, as somebody was asking me that story, was, and it ties into trust in the process and not seeing the entire goal. Because at the time that I pulled the trigger to start building my tiny house, this was 2014. When and I had been researching for a couple of years prior, but this was in, I think I got the package Octoberish of 2014. But I had an idea in my head of what my tiny house should cost, and it was based on um, all the wrong factors. Now that I know it was all the wrong factors, but it was based on housing that I'd seen at the time and what I knew people had spent on their houses, and I really had doubled what I knew someone had spent. But my factors were still off because they had done all of the work. I used general contractors. They had done their work over a long period of time. They lived in a different area, which can impact your costs for resources and materials, etc. So all of the variables were off, but that's what I based it on, and I doubled their cost trying to compensate for what I felt were the differences. And I was completely off, and my build ended up costing about double what I thought it was going to cost. And so there was a lot of scrambling for me, and I've spoken about the scrambling and taking of loans and borrowing from my 401k and maxing out all of my credit cards. But as I thought about that the other day, and this was the conversation that I was having, um, I've asked myself before, would I have gone ahead and built my house had I known that I was wrong on my estimate, guesstimate, and knowing that I didn't have the money? The answer probably is no. Just kind of based on what I was just talking about as being a project manager and needing to see the whole picture. The answer is 90 to 95% no. I would not have built my house had I known the whole picture at that time. And so for me, it is one of the things that I try to remember, like trusting the process. And like, and I've shared, friends loaned me money, and it was hardship. as I got closer to the end of my build, because I was out of money and I was tired. My build was stressful for a number of reasons, and some of them unnecessary. But I was done, and but it worked out. And I think I just shared the other week how I had run out of money. My house was completed in, it was Memorial Day weekend. My house was finished. I just moved in, and it was hot as I don't know what, but I didn't have any money to buy an AC unit. So I think I had a fan, but it wasn't doing anything. And I sat in my home from end of May to sometime in July without AC. But I also knew, at some point I have some money to buy AC. And then as I think about it, 8.5 years later, I would not have had this journey that I've had. And it's been a fabulous, a beautiful journey. Had I probably, no, had not probably, had I known at the time that I pulled the trigger to start. When I went and got my trailer, bought my trailer and um, brought it up, I would not have done any of that had I known I didn't have the money. So it is, again, speaking to trusting the process, and not necessarily needing to see the entire vision. And so, um, again, part of that conversation, and being able to let go of needing to know all of the things, which is why I need to get out of my own way, is the summary for that. Let's see. Sandra is asking a question, but I'm sure she's asking, it's only part of the question. Sandra, you're asking, why do I think the tiny home builder is something you're asking, but it's not a full question. So I'll answer that if you can explain what you're asking me. The time change takes me out. I wish they would pass a law to stop that foolishness forever. Absolutely takes me out. Um, Thank you, Keisha. I'm always welcome in Cali. I love to visit, so I need to put that. I haven't been in a while, and so I do need to come soon. So we need to chat. Um, Michelle is saying, I lived in California 20 years and left because of the earthquakes. I've lived in cold, after 24 inches of snow in Connecticut, and in the house for 4 days last winter for me. Moved to North Carolina. Yeah, that's a lot. Those snowstorms, like, I just can't imagine that. That's just way too much for me. And yeah, earthquakes. Like I think about on the East Coast. So we have tornadoes and hurricanes. Tornadoes scare me terribly, because they just pop up. Hurricanes, I mean, I'm scared of all of the storms. My difference in hurricanes and tornadoes is that with hurricanes, at least you have some advance warning, and you have the opportunity to make some personal decisions for your safety. But tornadoes, they just happen, and they're terrifying. Earth, and the same with earthquakes. It's just like, this is way too much. Just way, way, way too much to have to think about. Hi, Teresa. Good morning. Good afternoon. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Um, Rosin says, I know about taking those packages. I enjoy becoming a multi-thousandaire. Yeah, I have. I've actually had an opportunity. I need to count how many times I've been laid off, but there have been opportunities where I've gotten laid off, and then another job popped up, and I was able to double dip and all of those things, and it was just really, really nice. Every time I get laid off, I have wanted to relax, because I've not really taken the time to relax from corporate America. But then there's always the concern that you don't know when the next job is coming through, and you can't relax completely. And that's the unfortunate part of it. But I always say to people who get laid off or and haven't experienced it before, I've always landed in a much better place post the layoff than I was. But it is, again, trusting the process of knowing that. And it's a hard place to be in, especially like when I was getting laid off and taking care of my daughter, and responsibility in a house and all of the things like that. that is a different experience than being laid off as I have been as a tiny house dweller. Like the experience, one, I'm it's just responsible for me now, and my responsibilities are a lot less. So that's a totally different experience. Like sometimes I say, I can hustle and be a Walmart greeter to take care of the expenses I have now. So it's a totally different experience, and but it's still somebody else having control over you is a lot. What are the prices of the homes in those tiny house communities? Sandra, I don't know right off the top of my head, but I believe they're in the 200,000s, but don't quote me. I will make a note and I'll go look on their IG page. I gotta I can't think of, maybe I can look while we're talking. I can't think of the name of the community right now. I think they're in the 200,000s, but I could be wrong, so don't quote me. But I will add that information to the video as well as a link to the community that I'm speaking of. Um, Michelle is saying, commuted to NYC from Connecticut for 11 years. My colleagues laughed at me because I would be so wrapped up. Same. I have a old manager that I used to work with, and she would laugh because I'm layering. I always have some layers. Like you can take stuff off when you get too warm, but if you don't have it on, then you're cold, and that just um, is too much for me. Stacy is saying naming savings accounts really does help. Like it's a mental thing, absolutely. When I would look at my bank account, like it would one snap me into, oh, I got to save money. I'm saving for this. So if I was going to do something I shouldn't do, then it snapped me back into the reality. And it was also encouraging knowing and seeing that growing, and helping me get towards my goal. So I encourage everyone, like it's part of like vision boarding and keeping yourself on track. Naming your savings account for whatever you're working on is a mental trick that really works. Hawaii and Arizona don't change time and they enjoy it. All of the states should take note. I absolutely agree with that. That's what we need to be doing. Casey is asking, did you have an idea of where you were going to place your tiny house when you started building? No, I absolutely did not. And it's part of the stuff that I talk about in the two videos, where can I place my tiny house, and I'll add them again. No, but it was one of the things, again, trusting the process. I always knew and have always known in my 8.5 years that a location would show up, and it always has. I also say that tiny house living, my disclaimer is that it's not for the faint of heart. It is in areas where they're not allowed. It is someone being willing to take the risk. If you're not going to um, work with the city, if you're not working with your area to live legally, if you're going to kind of just be under the radar, as I have been under the radar, it is not for the faint of heart. You always have to have a plan A, B, C, D, all the way down the line. But you also have to know and trust the process that it will work out. And so, as I was building my house, I would ride around and look at properties and locations, houses that were in the areas that I was interested in being in, looking at properties and houses that would accommodate my house. And I spent a lot of time and money, like it was the part-time job, to building my house, where I would write down addresses and write people, um, mail. I was actually mailing letters to folks at these addresses that were, like, dear property owner, and I was telling my story of what about my house and what my house would need as far as utilities and who I was. And again, this was 2015, end of 2014, early 2015 that I was doing this work. So tiny houses weren't a thing like they are now. So many people, just assumed I was a weirdo, I'm sure. And so that was what I was doing, word of mouth on social media, because somebody knows somebody that has some property or opportunity, or they might just be in conversation, or somebody that is paying attention to your post that maybe you don't even know. It has an opportunity. And so I used all of those resources. And my first location came about because of somebody getting my letter and then sharing it with somebody else, and it got to someone who I was in the RV park. I don't know if you've seen that HGTV show. My first location was an RV park, and somebody shared a letter they received with somebody else, and it got to the RV park um, owner. It was a developer who had just bought the RV park. And at that time, his intent for that park was to change it into a tiny house community, a more, I don't want to say upscale. He's got, they're not upscale, they're cabins. He calls them cabins. But the park was old, and at the time that I was there, most of the people who lived there lived in older RVs, had been there for many years, and it wasn't the vision that this guy had for the property. And so he invited me there, because my house kind of fit in the vision. But anyway, I had a lot of trouble there, because I had trouble because of racism. I also had trouble because he was planning to upgrade the park and hadn't shared that with the other people that were there. So as he started raising their rents and doing all of the things, because he hadn't shared, I didn't even know that was his vision. I just knew he was really interested in my house. And so as he started raising their rents and all of those things, they attributed the blame for that to me. I actually heard them having a conversation about the black girl in the fancy condo on wheels. So they started doing passive aggressive stuff, and then it just went downhill from there. But it really had nothing to do with me, as I'm sure they figured out later on. Um, but yeah, I did not. Again, thoughts on why you should trust the process, because it's going to. And since that time, I have used Craigslist. I, and all of the things. I've had two locations happen very successfully from Craigslist, where I've shared my needs on Craigslist and been contacted by property owners. So again, more reason to trust the process. Um, Let's see. Teresa is saying, "Hey, Jewel, yes, being laid off or downsized is very hard. Would you recommend finding out about the cost while you save, or do the investigation to find your perfect design first? Would you recommend finding out about the cost while you save?" I would definitely, I think if I understand your question, I would say do both. It can't hurt to be saving your money. And then while you are saving your money, then also be doing your due diligence to design your home. If I'm understanding your question, Teresa, I would say do them both at the same time. So if you're saving, you already have a head start on the funding, and then you get to understanding exactly what your cost is going to be, and you're already in process of saving. If I'm understanding your question. Um, Casey is asking, how long did it take you to finish your tiny house build? So I kind of started I bought my um, custom tiny house trailer in October of 2014. I actually went to Florida and picked it up myself, and it kind of sat for a while because I was finishing my design and looking for a builder. Um, I am sorry, I'm sitting in the hotel room and I am over I can see 400 and I see an idiot backing up on 400, which is a major highway. This is weird. People are not smart. Um, but so my trailer sat for a while I was doing that. And then I would say my build kind of kicked off around January-ish. And kicked off around January-ish, but it was going slow. So if I think about it, like the time that it was a consistent build, it was about 3 months, and that was like consistent build. Once I found the builder, it was kind of going in spurts, and then for the 3 months, because I had one, we were filming for HGTV, and then two, I had a time, my lease was ending, end of May. So I had um, a cutoff that I had to be out of my apartment by end of May. So 3 months was the time that it took for consistent build, but it kind of started earlier than that, but it was just going slow. Um, Rosalind is saying, after 14 months into full-time tiny living, my house looks nothing like my initial perfect design. Um, and perfect is a word that I don't necessarily like. It's not gonna be perfect. Like nothing is perfect. But that's interesting that your house looks nothing like your initial design. And I don't know, Rosalind, if that means you learned some things about yourself and you needed to tweak your design, or you just went with a completely different design. I don't know exactly what that means. For you. My house, as I've shared, my house, it looks absolutely like the initial design, but there was a lot of work and effort that went into the design before we even started building. And as I talk and think about design for me, that and for long term, having an understanding of who you are and what you need from a tiny house and what you need in your home, and and putting that and factoring those considerations into your design is necessary for success. Um, so I agree. There's not going to be a perfect design for sure. Teresa is saying we have earthquakes in North and South Carolina also. I have felt an earthquake in Charlotte. I have felt an earthquake when I lived here in Atlanta. We do have earthquakes. You're absolutely right. I have not felt anything at the magnitude of what I understand they have in California. I don't think we've ever had that magnitude here, but they are increasing, and you're absolutely right. And they're increasing in intensity. Um, yes, I'm currently in the DMV, but seeing damage from tornadoes to structures in the South, aka North Carolina, has steered me towards building a shipping container home instead of a traditional tiny. Depending on the intensity of the tornado, a shipping container, tiny home, all of the things are going to be impacted by a tornado. A tornado will take down a large building. So depending on the intensity, it doesn't matter, shipping container or tiny home. It does make sense, as I've shared here on the video where I talked about safety, and I can add that in the video description. Your tie down plan is important for sure, but a tornado does not discriminate. Doesn't matter. Tiny home, shipping container, um, it'll take it all out because it does. Um, that wind is strong. Um, AD is saying, I love that. Always something better around the corner. And I'm assuming you're talking about for when I talked about dealing with being laid off. There has always been a better opportunity after a layoff. And what happens oftentimes in getting laid off is like you've been in the job for a while, you've got comfortable, you aren't it's like the devil you know versus the devil out there that you don't know, so you don't want to rock the boat. You feel like you know these people, maybe you don't like the job, but you're in a routine, it's comfortable, and you just are oftentimes settling for things that you really shouldn't and don't want to, but you're in that place of in that comfort zone. And so, yes, a layoff. Oftentimes, you hear about people who, kind of like where I said, I started my tiny house journey, or people who've gone into entrepreneurship. Is that the right word? Yes. I think it's right. Where it's been the catalyst to propel somebody to do bigger, better, greater. Um, and it is, getting you out of that comfort zone, and sometimes taking control in a situation where you weren't planning to do so. Um, I got Teresa saying I got laid off or downsized in 2022, and there haven't been any options in my field locally, so I changed to something that paid less. Um, I'd say keep looking. Teresa, your background, I don't know all of your background, but I'm sure there, and it, creating an opportunity or figuring out what it is that you want to do, and making an opportunity. Is there an opportunity for something that personally you want to do that can supplement um, some of that, or keep looking? Like, one of the things, and this isn't a job um, where we really focus on working. But I always say to people, make sure your resume is on point. One of the things that I have been hearing about lately is how, for women, we won't apply for jobs until we feel like we are 100% qualified for the job, where at that point we're really overqualified for the job if you're 100% qualified for everything on that job description. Whereas men, and we know the confidence level is, and oftentimes white men, the confidence level is so much more than what we have, and so they don't have to be able to do all of the things on that job description, and they're still applying and they'll get the job. And so that's one of the things that we have to do better, and differently. Another thing is a resume review. And one of the things that I've also been reading about is the power of AI, artificial intelligence, and using AI to help you write your resume, and using AI to tailor your resume to specific job descriptions. It's a pain in the butt to try to keep tailoring your resume, but AI has become my new best friend for some things like that, and using it to tailor your resume specifically for job descriptions, so that you're using the same words, and terminology, and your experience speaks to what they're looking for, and also helps you get past I guess it's the algorithms that they're using to go through the candidates. So that's another thing to consider. And I also I keep my, I don't know if you're on LinkedIn, but I keep my open for opportunity, or whatever the flag is on LinkedIn, that recruiters can see, that not everyone else can see. I keep that flipped, so I'm always open for opportunities to come in. And I keep my resume posted on Indeed, and just have, like, passively have my resume looking for me, or working for me when I'm not necessarily working for myself. And when I do all of that, like, sometimes people, feel a loyalty for an employer. And there's no loyalty in these streets from an employer. They will, when they have layoffs, they laying you off. When they firing you, they're firing you. And I have seen, you work for a place for years, and they have a layoff, and they will even let you work that entire day. And then by the end of the day, here they come saying, you're getting laid off, and no notice whatsoever. When it's time, they don't have any loyalty. So I feel like there's often a misplaced loyalty that we have to an employer. I Another recognition for me was a friend that I lost. Um, this month will be 2 years now, and having lost him, and then his employer within a few days trying to collect his laptop. Um, that there's no loyalty. They replacing you, whether you are alive or deceased, and they have no sympathies or any of the things. So I think there's some things that we have to do to set ourselves up. And one of the things I keep reading about women not applying for jobs where we feel like we're not qualified, when we're very likely overqualified, and so pushing ourselves to be more in a stretch position, or is something that might be some considerations for you. Uh, KC is saying, I was considering a container home, but really want 10 feet wide, and containers are about 8.5. I think that's correct. Um, that is correct. So if you want the width, either you're knocking out a wall on a container and opening it up, or considering something wider. Absolutely. Let's see. Um, T is saying, I live in Texas where tornadoes are common, and yes, sporadic. This is the reason my husband is so concerned about living tiny Texas. Have land in West Texas, but no movement yet. In due time, absolutely. Consider the safety options, um, all of the things that you have to consider for your safety. Having an exit plan, and just like I have all of the alerts on my phone to kind of, and I pay way more attention to weather and storms now than I did previously. Um, but yeah, I also I would really, really like, if I had my own land, to build a storm cellar. Like I always, as I think about a storm cellar, I always think about, like, um, what was is why do I want to the Wizard of Oz? Yeah, I was going to say Alice in Wonderland. It's a wrong story. The Wizard of Oz, and how folks used to have storm cellars, and do folks still have storm cellars? Like, um, if I lived in, what do they call it, Tornado Alley, or Tornado Row, where it's constant storms, like, I definitely have a storm cellar, and I often wish I had a storm cellar now. It just seems like logic to me. Um, Veronica is saying, I own land I'd like to offer to lease to the tiny house community. How do I get started? So I will, and I am working. I actually have a meeting tomorrow. So I am doing all of the things. So I have the matching service that I've been doing, and I'm sharing here again. I've been doing for the last 3 or 4 years with the tiny house community, matching property owners, landowners, farm owners with people interested in tiny houses, people who have tiny houses and future builds. It has been a manual process that has become very, very overwhelming, as the participation has grown. So I am in the process of working on a tool that, and thanks to Teresa and some connections she helped me make, I am working on a tool that will allow automation of that process. That everybody can go into this tool and offer property, search for property, et cetera, et cetera. And so I think I am about, meeting tomorrow, but I think I'm kind of about a month out from being able to launch this. I'm excited about it. It's going to be really good. It is going to be a paid subscription model. So stay tuned, Veronica. That information, the update is forthcoming. I'm not doing anything with, I do have the link on my Tiny House Trailblazers site, I can add that link if you want to complete that form, but there will be a redoing of all of that in opportunity. So stay tuned, and I'll devote a video to the launch once that's ready. Um, V. Cooper is saying another reason I'm interested in a metal building as a home is that it will serve as a Faraday cage in case of an electromagnetic attack. I'm in prepper mode. Okay. All right. You're doing all the things. I appreciate that. Thank you. Um, okay, so Veronica, I see you posted that twice. Let me know if you still have a question about it. Casey is saying the same thing. A tiny with a basement tornado shelter. We were thinking on the same level. Yes. Oh, that's rich. Fancy condo on wheels. Indeed. Yes. The funny thing about it was when that conversation, and so that I was just speaking about me over here and people at the RV park talking about me. I was sitting on, that's when I had just built my house and I had the smaller screened in porch. And I was actually sitting on my screened in porch. And I guess folks didn't know I was out there. This conversation was happening uh, like at an RV that was a couple of spots away, a spot away from me. And they were commiserating that the price, their rental cost was going up, and then that's when they said it had to do with the black girl in the fancy condo on wheels. And so I said, I forgot what I said, but I said something about I let them know for sure that I could hear them, and that I said something about it is kind of fancy or something like that. I can't remember exactly what I said. Um, let's see what else. Thank you, V. I did see her question later. I wasn't looking at the question, so thank you. I'm glad y'all know I am gonna get to the questions when I see them. Thank you, thank you. So Veronica, yes, more to come. Stay tuned. Thank you for that question. Yes, Teresa, thank you. I'm glad that was helpful. Um, Jewel, you connected me with John and Millette Bradley for their shipping container build class in October. Do you know of any tiny home build classes also? Probably. Let me hold on. Let me make a note. Tiny house build classes. Yes. I will add a link to some classes in the description. Um, all right. That's one, two, three, four, five, six things that I said I'm gonna do. Y'all know I gotta make a note. Um, Rosalind saying my design is a work in process and I'm learning a lot about myself. I'm trusting the process and getting going with the flow. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I will add a link to, I did do a design video where I talk about figuring out your design. And that is um, one of the things that I say, learning about yourself and knowing what you need in a space. That is so key to the success of long-term tiny house living. Absolutely. I'll add a link to that video too. Earthquakes occur all along the eastern coastline. Fracking has intensified these occurrences. We've had them in the DMV too. Yep. Man is messing up the world. Climate change, fracking, all of the things. And yeah, Rosalind says, I am about 70% done with my build and I have done almost 90% of the work myself. That's fabulous. I have also found that using repurposed things bring me so much joy that is causing the build to take longer, and I'm okay with that. Yes, and so I do talk about that in the building video, how you have to decide for people who want to use repurpose, like you have to decide whether What is your priority in the build? If you are on a time crunch, using repurposed materials doesn't always work because you have to find the materials, and that takes some time to find materials, and then you might have to have somewhere to store the materials, so that you can have them available, because you might find something and it's not what you need at that particular time, but you know you want to use it later in the build. So having somewhere to store the materials, finding the materials, having the time to find the materials. So you have to decide whether the length of time of your build is most important, where most likely you're going to have to go with what's available, or if you have time to take within the build and then utilize repurposed materials, which will um, benefit you in the long run if that's something that is what you want to do. The other thing about using repurposed materials that I mentioned in the build video is the fact that you don't want to use repurposed materials for um, the framing or the pieces of the build that are a major part of the structural integrity of your building. People I know have used repurposed trailers. Um, I, I don't necessarily recommend that. I know people have repurposed trailers and done a lot to get them up to par for, where they might use an old RV trailer or an old mobile home trailer, and then do the work to get it kind of up to par for a new tiny house build. I've also seen videos where people say by the time they did all of that, between the actual work, the labor, and the cost of it, they probably should have just bought a new trailer. My thought is that with the trailer being the foundation of your home, that's not an area that I personally would skimp on. Obviously, it's up to each individual to make that decision for themselves. But I don't using repurposed material for the structural integrity of a build is in those areas is not recommended. But in your interior or your siding or all of those things um, that you can use it later that aren't focused on structural integrity is where you should absolutely try to use repurposed materials as much as you can. Congratulations, Rosalind. That's amazing that you've done about 90% of the work. That's fabulous. I can't wait to see the end result and maybe have you here as a guest I think we talked about that, if you're interested in that. Um, Teresa is saying exactly. They laid off about a third of the employees that day around lunchtime. Yeah, that's what they do. They'll have you work all day. As I think about the time when I got laid off, the time that I've been talking about, that when I got laid off right before my tiny house build, I think my somewhere down in my spirit, I knew I was getting laid off. And it's kind of the second time something like that has happened, where so I would have to go to New York kind of on a regular basis to go to the office. I mean, I have lots of family in the area, and I would go and not always go see my family. But this particular time, I rented a car. I saw all of my family. We went to dinner. I spent so much time with them, had an amazing time, saw so much of my family that particular time. And I just had a ball. And I went riding uh, I think it's the Hudson, is it the Hudson Parkway? I think that's what it's called. It's really beautiful area where you can look over into the city. And I spent time there. Like, I did all of the things while I was there this particular time. And it was on my last day there, as I had been working. I think I was there for a week. I had been there for all of that time. And my last day there, when I was heading back, is when they told me, when they gave me the ultimatum. And I was like, oh, bet. I mean, like I said, I had a fabulous time. And it was, on their dime that I had enjoyed spending so much time with my family. And somewhere down in my spirit, I must have known that was the last time that I'd be on their dime, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. And I even like I wasn't even sad. Like it was like, okay, this is, this ain't the first time, this ain't the last time. I got a plan, and I thank y'all because I had a fabulous time up here this time spending time with my family. Um, 100% to loyalty from employers, none, zero. Take care of you. We are usually overqualified. Absolutely, absolutely. Um, C is saying, y'all are in my head. I was just looking up above ground tornado shelters you can buy. Yeah, I want mine underground. Like I don't want anything else above ground. Like I want to be able to go down in the ground and let the tornado go over. But yeah, tornado shelters are should be a thing. Um, Hello, Sophia from Tacoma, Washington. Oh, thank you, Tracy. I appreciate that. Thank you, thank you. Um, yes, loud quitting. There is no loyalty with these employers. Nope, zero, zero, zero. Um, yes, the fancy condo on wheels, the black girl in the fancy condo on wheels. I was proud. Your home is fancy and beautiful. Thank you. I was so proud, so proud. Um, Jewel, you are such a gracious resource. I do still need to consult with you. I hope to connect with you soon. You are such a wealth of knowledge and information. Thank you. I appreciate that. I do hope to connect with you soon. This is where I find my joy. So this is the stuff that I keep saying. I just need to figure out how to make it pay the bill so that I don't have to work for the man. But this is where I find my joy in community with you all and talking tiny houses and all the things around the opportunity with tiny houses. I need help. I do not know where to start, but I know that I want my tiny house in Georgia. So help help looks like the first place I would say is start with the series. What's your question here? I think I have spoken to, and some of the videos will be in this video description, but I'd start at video one, in all the things that I've talked about. I even have a video on how to get started. So I'd watch those videos. Once you get through that series, I would also listen to some of the conversations that I've had with people here who have shared how they got started. I've shared how I've gotten started. And then once you get through all of that, if you still have questions or want some help, I do offer consultation. So the link to for that consultation will be in the video description. I do charge for consultation, so let me put that out there. But the free stuff is here on YouTube and in here in these chats. If you have specific questions, I normally can answer specific questions, but go through the videos. I feel like I've answered like how to get started and all of the things that you need to think about to get started. But I'm happy to help you navigate this journey. That's why I'm here, and this is what I do. Um, Rosin is saying I'm using repurposed cabinets, and I retrofitted a lot of the things I already had for my house. So, Rosin, we need to really need to talk about your journey and share your expertise, your experience of this type of work. Because one of the things that often happens is it's not, and it might not be the case with you, but sometimes people learn the skill as they're going about it. YouTubing, it's not necessarily a skill like Keisha talked about that. Keisha and Noah, who we talked with the other week, and they were talking about how learning to do things that they weren't necessarily wouldn't say they were skilled in. Noah had some skills, but some of the things that are outside their skill set. Figuring out how to do these things and learning how to do the things because one, you're saving money and you have an interest in it, and it feels different when it's your house and you've got you want it to be a certain way or you're investing in yourself. It feels different to do. to do these things. So congratulations to you, and I can't wait to have this conversation with you. Uh, Teresa is asking, where's Robert today? Yeah, Robert by now would have, Robert said he had a lot going on. So by now, Robert, we would have known Robert was here. Um, I don't know where Robert is today, but hi, Robert, if you watch this later. Day Rawls is saying YouTube channel IAG Farms built an amazing tornado shelter in Mississippi on their land. I recommend watching their channel. Thank you for that. I need to check that out as well. Thank you. Thank you, V, for watching the chat for me. I appreciate you. Thank you. Thank you. Clubhouse. Okay. I need to look into that, even though I kind of don't need another distraction, but I do need an opportunity to make some money. So there's a something I need to do and try to find the balance. All right, somebody else is recommending that channel. So we need to check it out to talk about the tornado shelter. Maybe I even need to talk to them. So I'll have to check out their channel. Oh, you're very welcome. Very, very welcome. Very, very welcome. Um, do you have a site? Steven is saying, do you have a site that I can send you a donation? You give such wonderful advice and you never ask for anything. Well, thank you so much. I'm going to, I don't drop it in the chat for myself because this is where I feel like I can give to the community. I do ask for it for my guests when I offer, when they offer their time. So I'm going to drop this. Thank you so much for asking that question. I'm always open to taking some love offerings. So I appreciate that. Thank you so much, Stephen. I appreciate the ask and consideration. Um, Rosalind is saying, I have a PhD from YouTube University. I mean, hey, it's out there. It is free knowledge, free game for the taking. I also have an elementary working knowledge of plumbing and electrical. That's fabulous. Yeah. So we are going to be talking to Rosalind to see her house if she's open to sharing it and hear about her journey. And she's close to finish, so that this might be sometime soon. PhD from YouTube University. I mean, it's out there. Somebody is sharing some knowledge, and so you should take advantage of that knowledge. Um, Hi, new to the content. What is too much for a tiny home for two people? I'm not sure I understand your question. Are you saying what is too expensive? I'm not sure I understand what you're asking. What is too much for a tiny home for two people? Um, and welcome. Thank you for joining. Happy you're here. Maybe give me a little more detail on your question and hopefully I can answer it. If you're asking about cost, costs are going to vary on size, your location, who's doing the work. Like there's so many variables that go into building. So I can't say, and wouldn't be able to say what's too much for a tiny house for two people. If we're talking about cost, it's gonna vary on your design and amenities, all of those things. So if you're asking specifically about cost, but maybe I don't understand your question. So if you can clarify a little bit more, maybe I can understand what you're asking and might have an answer for you. Stephen, thank you. That was very kind. I appreciate you asking that question. Um, all right. Let's see. I'm waiting to see, and I don't want to mess up your name. Harris. Um, I don't want to mess up your name, but maybe reframe your question so I can understand what you're asking. All right, we've been on here for an hour and 15 minutes. I again thank y'all because you bring the conversation. Every time I think I don't have a topic, we have plenty of conversation and we have long conversations. So I thank you all. Um, All right, I'm trying to see if this question comes in so that I can answer it. I hope everybody has a great Sunday, a great and safe weekend. I am actually um, planning to do some work for my weekend since I've been procrastinating, as I was talking about. So I am working on that project I mentioned for the matching work that I've been doing and some other things. I have meetups to think and plan and schedule since that was something I promised I would do. So I've got those two things on my, plus some others on my list. Thank you, Michelle. You as well. Um, I'm still going to try to give it a few minutes to see if the question is being um, asked again so I can better understand it and maybe answer it. And if not, I am going to, oh, here we go. Um, oh, oh, I see a lot of people say you might as well buy a regular home because the cost after building gets high. Um, yes. Um, and you just answered your own question. Um, we talk about that a lot here. People always have something to say, um, about what other folks are doing. And the thing that my answer to that for building a tiny house, and when people say for the cost of what you spent for that tiny house, you could buy a regular house. You can't. It's not apples to apples. For what you and also it depends on location. So my tiny house, when I built it in 2015, out of pocket, I probably spent about $85,000. I had some sponsors and some other things, but out of pocket, I probably paid about $85,000. People said the same thing. You could buy a regular house, and again, this was 2015, for $85,000. Where? There is no place that I want to live that I knew of in 2015 where I could buy a house for $85,000. My first house that I bought in 1996 in Atlanta was more than $85,000. And then when you factor in for a house, I'm also going to have a 15 or 30-year mortgage. So even if the house costs $85,000, I am not paying $85,000 by the time I finish with that 15, 30-year mortgage. I'm paying 2 or 3 times that by the time the interest adds up. Um, Again, location. I might be able to find an $85,000 house, but it's not going to be anywhere that I want to live. Um, so all of the things that people say about a tiny house. So like tiny houses right now are costing, some, depending on your build, they're in the $100,000 and sometimes up. You're always going to save, not always. You're likely going to save money if you build the tiny house yourself, but then that is going to be time and expertise that you have to factor in. But you still are not going to find a house that you want to live in for that price. And a tiny house is going to always cost more per square footage than a conventional home. So that's something that you have to know right off the gate. But you're not, one, I wouldn't listen to that. Two, it's not actually true. And it's your money. I don't feel like your original question was, what's too much? Too much for a tiny home for 2 people. Again, I spent $85,000 in 2015 out of pocket for mine, and I built at a time when there were so many people who lived in the tiny house movement who were saying you don't spend more than this amount for a tiny house. A tiny house shouldn't be bigger than this. They had rules within the tiny house movement that they felt you shouldn't do as relative to tiny houses. At the end of the day, it's your money. At the end of the day, it is what is it? What is it? that you want to do? What is important to you? How much do you want to spend on it? Do you want to go spend this money on a house somewhere else? If a tiny house is what you want, it is your money. You spend your money on the tiny house. Is really my answer for that. We try really hard not to feed into other people's opinions about our lives and our money here, and it's hard to do, sometimes drowning it out. But if those people aren't footing the bill for your tiny house, then their input and thoughts on what you spend should really not be your concern. um, so that's my answer. I hope I helped answer that. The only comparably priced home may be a manufactured home, but quality varies with those. Absolutely. And then also quality, and what is that manufactured home made out of? So the pros for tiny houses are that they're being built out of more sustainable materials. They're also being stick built, which is, the same as a conventional home. What is the manufactured home built out of? And comparing quality and sustainability is also a big factor. Um, Teresa is saying, at church today, the sermon was all about sharing the love of knowledge. I love this platform for that specific reason. People of color need this knowledge. Thank you, Teresa. Don't try to get me emotional. Y'all know y'all try to get me. Thank you. I feel like this is what I'm supposed to do, and I think I've shared that with you all before. Uh, Rosalind says a traditional house for 85K will probably be in a rural area with 10 roaches in the corner. Hilarious. That wasn't my ministry. So my tiny house. 8.5 years later, I still adore my tiny house. And so it was money well spent. And I'm so glad I didn't listen to anybody else's opinion for what I should do and how I should live and those things. Linda, same to you. Casey is saying building a regular foundation home doesn't allow you to move your home around without having to move. That's what attracts me to tiny house living. I can change location and have all of my things unchanged. Absolutely. I agree with that 100%. Um, I've seen tiny homes for up 200K. I think those seem a bit much. Again, I'm gonna say it is dependent on your budget and what works for you. I'm not throwing shade on somebody's house that costs $200,000 if it has amenities and things for them that they felt like warranted the cost of it, then I support them. I feel like everybody gets to do what works best for them, what the money for them. They still might not want a large house. They might not. I they might not want to, the comment just about moving your home, there is something to be said for that, for somebody who doesn't want to be in the same area all the time. The house has wheels and you can relocate it and still have all of your things with you. So I still try to let people do the things that work best for them, and mind my business. So I feel like it is a decision that we all get to make for ourselves, what works best for us. Very welcome, Veronica. I hope I answered your questions before. All right, it is 1:24. I have been, and we can talk. Seems like we can talk all afternoon, but I have some work to do. I gotta get on um, my list of to dos. What is the square footage of your home now? Much love and blessings to you. Thank you so much. So with the add-on sunroom space, my house is about 470, 475, 470 square feet. Um, the front porch, so when you're calculating square footage, the front porch that I've added in does not count in square footage, but because when you're, and you may already know this, so apologies if I'm telling you something you already know. As you're calculating square footage, you only calculate heated, livable space. And so my front porch does not count in the square footage. So just the sunroom space and the original tiny home. With the sunroom space and the original tiny home space, it is 470 square feet. And I always share that my house looks big, much bigger than it is because I have all of the windows. It opens my space. But that's what it is. You're very welcome. Thank you for joining. And I hope you'll come back. I had a lot of new names today. So I hope you all will come back and continue to join us. Can you pack up the additions easily if you have to move? No. And my intent for adding, as I added those additions, was that I have no intentions of moving my house again. They are built on kind of like foundation. And so I knew as I was expanding and spending that money that my intent was not to move my house anymore. I could I could still pull my house out of there. I would have to disconnect the sunroom space and the porch, but that would also mean I need to undo all of that work, and I won't be doing that because that would just be money going down the drain. So my intent is not to move my house. My intent is more so to have that as home base and move myself around as I travel and spend time in other places, but that will be home base. Uh, Very welcome. Thank you, thank you, thank you. L. Jackson is saying it looks so much bigger. It does. I promise you, it's the windows. Um, Very welcome, Sandra. I will be emailing you, and so we can reconnect on what we're working on. So thank you for joining. Um, who made these rules for tiny houses? Most people building schooly tiny houses don't even take showers every day. It's a no. um, the movement has always been funny to me. When I was building my tiny house, and I'm getting ready to go, when I was building my tiny house, I kept it under wraps for such a long time as to the size of my tiny house, as well as the fact that I was doing, like, including a walk-in closet, and how much money I was spending on my house, because there was so much noise in the tiny house movement about what you weren't supposed to do at that time. And as I've always said, I knew I was doing all the things, because it's my house. It's my retirement plan. And there were so many things that didn't fit with the model of what they were doing for me. That wasn't, and I love the people say that wasn't my ministry. Their homes and plans and design wasn't my ministry. So I think we all get to do what works best for us. And so yeah, and that was one of the things I shared with them, for a movement that wants to get cities and counties and states to allow us to be legalized. As you're working against those rules, there are, interestingly, so many rules that are within the tiny house movement. You want other people to be accepting of you, but you then have so many rules within the movement. So it's just an interesting space, but none of it applied to me because I wasn't that was it wasn't they weren't spending my money. So anyway, thank you, Teresa. Thank you for joining. Does renting the land include water and electricity? It is going to depend on how you set up, like whoever's property is on, what your agreement is with them. I talk about that in Placing Your Tiny House, and I'm going to share those videos. It just depends on your agreement. It can be included, it might not be included, but it's going to be like on each individual situation. I have had it where it was included in one of my locations. It was included, and I've paid for it separately. So, like, I pay a separate electric bill at my current location. I don't pay water because I'm on well water, but I pay parking, and then I pay a separate bill. So it just depends on the individual setup. Same to you. Same to you. Jewel, are you renovating your travel trailer? Will you take us along the journey of remodeling? I'm trying to figure out what to do with my travel trailer. I just had a consultation, and right now it looks like, so because it's been sitting, it's got some damage, and the work to it might be more than I want to invest in it. So I'm trying to figure out what I'm doing with the travel trailer. Like, I might sell it and get something else to work on. I haven't figured that out. That's on to-do list. But once I get ready to figure out what I'm doing, I'm definitely planning to have a travel trailer of sorts, and I will absolutely take you all on that journey. Your house, your rule, your needs. Absolutely, I agree with that. Um, oh, okay. I need to talk to C about Clubhouse. Okay, thank you. Let me make that note. She's holding on to information she hasn't shared. We're overdue for a conversation, so let me check with her on that. Thank you for that hint. All right, let's see. Very, very welcome. Very, very welcome. Thank you all very much for joining. I am going to close this out. We have been here for an hour and a half. Thank y'all for the conversation as always. Thank you, thank you, thank you. All right. This has been one of our community conversations as part of the What's Your Question segment of this series. Um, I hope to have a guest for next week so we can be in conversation with a guest in and around the tiny house movement, but I need to work on that. So thank you as always for joining. As you all do, I so appreciate you all for being here. And I hope that if this is your first time, you'll come back and join us. I hope that if you found this video helpful, that you will like it, you'll share it, and then you'll also subscribe to the channel so that you will know when content is going live and when we're here in conversation. So thank you, everybody. Have a great weekend. Take care and be safe.